Can I start or? Okay. So welcome, first of all. Very glad to be here, and thank you for attending. Always opportunity to thank the sponsors. They are the ones that make this possible. A little bit about myself. So my name is Rui Romano. I'm from Portugal. Do most of my work around consulting at DevScope, where I lead the business intelligence team. I'm a Power BI expert. I really love the platform. I work with it since day one. These are my contacts. If just drop me an email if you want me to share the slides or the demos. Although I will publish the slides on the platform. And I'm a community guy, so I lead a Power BI community in Portugal. I'm a data platform MVP. And the session that I bring to you today is called Power BI Tips, Tricks, and Hacks. The idea is just to share with you some useful tips that I found useful in my Power BI implementations and projects. I must warn you that this session is very fast-paced, so I only have 45 minutes. It's full of demos. It's more focused on productivity tips, things that can actually help you to be more productive, more efficient. It's not an introduction to Power BI, so I'm assuming that you already know Power BI, you are comfortable with Power BI. It's not a deep dive on anything, although I will show some code and some complex stuff, but don't worry about understanding the details. Worry mostly about understanding the possibilities. One more time, just drop me an email and I will gladly share with you the code. I have a lot more tips than the ones that I'm going to show you, but these are my top ones, or the ones that I think it's important to share with you at the moment. So you won't see anything about advanced DAX or advanced Power Query. So and this will be one slide for each tip or hack. Okay, it will be so it doesn't have any a sequence. So okay, so the first tip that I want to show you, and it's actually pretty basic, but it's something that I see a lot of times people don't know about it, or they don't know the potential of it. It's the REST API. So Power BI has a REST API, and you can use this REST API for a lot of stuff. So you can do automation. You can be more productive, mostly. You can do DevOps. So you can use the REST API with Azure DevOps or PowerShell scripts or Python to automate tasks like deployment of a data set or deployment of a report, rebinding. You can use the REST API for real-time operations to send data to Power BI and have real-time dashboards. So you can automate the data set and data flow refresh and make a chain from your ETL processes that run locally to the Power BI that runs in the cloud. You can use PowerShell. You can use the REST API to export all the data from your Power BI tenant and, for example, do backups of all the reports and all the data sets. So there are a lot of things that you can do. I have some links to the APIs. You can. I mostly, and the things that I'm going to show you, it will be in PowerShell because I'm more comfortable with PowerShell. But you can use this REST API with whatever tool that can call a REST API. So you can even use some low-code or no-code tools like Power Automate to call these APIs directly. I will show you two examples of how these REST APIs can be useful. So the first one, and I actually have a session about this. So the session is on YouTube. And one more time, you can see the session. If you want this, send me an email. I will send you the code and the Power BI report that you are seeing here on the right. But monitor your Power BI tenant is something that, first, if you are not doing it, and if you are in any way responsible or a Power BI admin or even a Power BI developer, and you are not looking into this data, I can tell you that you are not making the best decisions. Okay, you are driving blind. So you probably, as an example, maybe you are designing mobile reports on every report. You are spending time, you are spending money on those designs, and no one is using mobile at your tenants. Or maybe only 10% of the people are using mobile at the tenant. And maybe you shouldn't prioritize that. And with the REST API, there are two APIs that you can use to get. The first one and the most important one is the activity API, that you can get everything that happens in your tenant. And then you have the metadata API, the async APIs, that allows you to get everything that exists in your tenants in regarding the reports, the data sets, the data sources of the data sets, and the activity and the entire tenant. I will show you the final result, the Power BI report, but then you can build a solution like this. If you want to run locally and store this data locally, you can have PowerShell scripts that go and fetch the data. If you want to build it in Azure, you can do it in Azure Function. Just from Denmark, just built an example, and he does a blog post about this on Azure Data Factory to collect and store this data, and also be aware, for example, on the most important information that you can get from this is the activity. And if you are not getting the data, you are losing the data, because Power BI only gives you 30 days of data back. So if you are not collecting and storing this data, I can tell you that you are losing very valuable information of what is being used on your Power BI tenant. Let me just show you the report. So this is the activity report that I built. So, and I have a solution that collects this data using PowerShell. And what you can do with this is first, okay, I can just see the amount of logs in my tenants. I can see the distinct users on my tenant. So I know that my Power BI tenant only have 88 distinct users, but in a single day, it never has more than 19. And this is very important, for example, if we are talking about Power BI Premium, because in Power BI Premium, you will probably scale up if you have a lot of distinct users. But if they don't access at the same time, maybe you are buying a P2 and a P1 is enough. And I can see that through the hour evenly. So I can see the amount of distinct users by hour. I can see if my if I'm implementing a Power BI project, one of the things that is very important is the authoring. Is the authoring getting bigger? So people creating reports, a self-service strategy, or are getting lower? And that mobile question is also very important. If, for example, I have a report, an application that is called Manager Cockpit. Is mobile important on this application? Yes, because a lot of people use mobile. A lot of users use this application use mobile. So it's important. But if I click, let's say, on this one, then mobile, I'm the only one that uses the mobile for this application. So maybe it's not too important. I shouldn't spend time and effort designing the mobile application. This is the activity data, and then you can also look at the catalog data, what exists in the whole tenant. So what does exist in terms of how many workspaces, how many dashboards, how many data sets, and very important, the data sources. So how many data sets do I have that connect to SQL data sources, or to folders, or to SharePoint lists? And I can even search. So I can come here and search for CRM, and I will see all the data sources that have CRM in their path or connection string. And just as the last example, you can also look at the users and the licenses for here and cross this data with Power BI. So I can see in my entire tenant, I have 49 users that they don't access, and if they didn't even do a login into Power BI. And they have a Power BI license. So I'm spending money on these users, but they are not actually using Power BI. So you can cross the data from the Graph API in this case with a Power BI activity, and you can get some very, very useful insights into your tenant. So if you are a Power BI admin, if you are responsible for Power BI in any case, just look at this data because it's of major importance. Now, and the way I built this, so this is one example of the script. I call it the fetch activity. You can see that it's a 70-line code script. It's not very complex. So the only thing that I need to do is to get the authentication token and then call the REST API. I'm using a PowerShell commandlet called Powervi IPS. This is an open source PowerShell commandlet module. You can use also, Microsoft also has one. I'm using this because I have more flexibility to edit this code. So I'm only calling that activity the REST API activity events and calling this day by day and just collecting this data and storing it in a folder. And in the end result, I can build easily a Power BI report to analyze this data. So this is the first tip. Then the second tip, a little bit more complex, but this is something that can be very, very useful to you. So I call this the rebind report. So that is an operation that you can do with the REST API that is called the rebind. What I mean about rebind, and let me try to show you. Click here on the demo here. Okay. So what I mean about rebind is this. Sorry. Okay. This is the browser that I want. This. No, it's the correct one. So what I mean about rebind is, so imagine or look at this. Let's go to the lineage view. And so I have 3 reports that they are all of these reports, they are targeting dataset A. So I have 3 reports, test 1, test 2, test 3. They all connect to dataset A. A rebind operation is taking this report over here, so this connection, and making a change. So the connection will change to this report. Why do we want to do this? Well, there are many scenarios. So one useful scenario is you somehow mess up this data set, or there is a bug, you just want to publish a new one with new data, or there is a corruption error, I don't know. You just want to delete this one, and then you publish the new one, but you don't want to lose all the reports that connect to dataset A. So what you do is you upload the new dataset and you do the rebind. Another example is going from development to production, or even you just want to upload a new version of the dataset and you want to test it, and then in the end you want to do the rebind. So you have 2 ways to do this rebind. The easiest and supported way of doing it, because this in the end I will show a hack, something that is actually not supported. Let's call it the ad hoc rebind. And the ad hoc rebind, and one more time, I'm using PowerShell just because I'm more used to. So I have a script where I say, okay, I want to go and to the report test 1 and report test 2. And these are GUIDs, the unique identifiers of in this case, the workspace and the report ID. How do you get this? So if you open a report online, let's just open this report. So this in here, this in here, this is the workspace ID, and this is the report ID. So you grab this, and I have an array called with the list of the combination of workspace and reports ID. So I want to go to test 1 and test 2 reports, and I want to target to change the data set to dataset V. And let's just go back to the lineage just to make sure that they are targeting dataset A, so I want them to target dataset B. So the script, what we will do is, okay, I'm using the Powervi IPS commandlets. I'm going to get the authentication token, because to connect and to communicate with the REST API, you need to have this OAuth token. So I'm getting I'm using the get PBI auth token from the Powervi IPS module to get the token, and then I'm just calling the API, and I will call an API called rebind. And on the rebind, I just need to say, okay, the new data set is this. So this is another parameter, the new data set. So let's just run it. So I have the logs, it's saying everything went smoothly. If we refresh the lineage, you will see that test 1 and test 2 now connects to dataset B. Now, the thing is, this is good enough if everything is inside the workspace, but we have a problem, because sometimes, and there is an amazing feature that we use all the time, at least in my team, we use it all the time. It's called shared datasets. And dataset A could be used in other workspaces, not this workspace. So I'm at the workspace rebind datasets, but there are other reports, so sales 1, sales 2, sales A, sales B, that they don't exist in this workspace. They exist in other workspaces. So, and the thing is, if I know about this, of course, that I can go to the script and identify all of these reports and configure the script, or I can be a little bit smarter. And what I'm going to show you now, first, just let you know, this is completely unsupported. It works, but it's unsupported, so it might stop working. But I can tell you from experience that it was very, very useful for me in a lot of projects. So what I'm going to do is, so Power BI has this information. So Power BI actually knows, if you click on this button here, the show impact workspaces, if you click here, Power BI knows where, if there is any report that is connecting to this data set. There is no public API for you to get this data, but there is a non-public API. And how do you discover this non-public API? If you click on the browser on F12, this will give you a network monitor. And in this network monitor, there is a calling. Every time you click here, it's called the related API. Let's click. So there is a call to the related content API. And if you click here, this will return a JSON with all the related reports that exist in this, connected to this data set. Let me show you just a preview. And this will show you all the reports from all the workspaces that connect here. We have another problem, and we can call this API, okay? But we have another problem, that this API, the URL for this API, it's another API called Data Lineage Impact Analysis, and it gives here one thing, it's called the model ID. And the model ID, it's not the dataset ID. And you need to discover and you need to translate your dataset ID to this model ID. How do you do that? There is another non-public API that it's called group something. And let me just, if you click on the workspace, it's this group metadata. And in this call of this group metadata, this actually, you gave it as a parameter the workspace ID. And in here, this will return the model ID. So you need to call first this group group metadata API to get the model ID, and then you can call the other API to get the related content, and then you can just do the rebind. Okay, let me show you the code. Okay, it's here. I call it report rebind auto. And the script, it's very straightforward, so it's not too complex script, but what I need to give as a parameter is, okay, I want to, everything that is targeting dataset A, I want to now be targeting dataset B. So one more time, just to be clear, I just want to, everything that is connecting to dataset A, test tree, and all the other reports, I want them to bind it, to be binded to dataset B. So this is the parameter. And then I need to give the internal API. So sometimes this changes. Or this will change between the data region. How do you find your data region? It's very easy. So if you go on the network monitor, it's here. It will be on the URL of the request. It's also on the about of Powervi. So you get the token, similar, and then you call the internal API to get the model ID. And after you get the model ID, you call the impact analysis API with the model ID. And then this is the actual code that will do the rewind. So this will, for each, this will loop all the related reports. And for each report, it will call the rewind. So if I run the script, this will do the entire rewind. And let's go back here and refresh. And now everything will be connected to dataset B. Okay. And it's completely automatic. So, and you can, just to give you an example, I have a problem in a customer of a data set that has more than 100 reports connected to it. And I have a corruption problem. We even opened a support ticket. It was a very important data set. We needed to solve it ASAP. And this was the difference of doing it in a matter of minutes or hours between doing it in a matter of days, because going to figure it out and going to each workspace and each report and getting that ID was very, very painful. So with this script, you can do it. Okay, so the next tip. So this is not an API tip. So those two were two examples of what you can do with the APIs. Now I'm going to show you another very, very useful hack. This is actually also not supported. So every time there is something that is not supported, I will call it an hack, and it has a warning in here, but it's also very, very useful. So this is a hack to how to copy the entire layout of a Powervi desktop file from one file to the other. Why do you want to do it? For example, you want to reuse the entire layout of between two PBIX files. So imagine that you have multiple teams working in multiple Powervi development, and there is one team that has an amazing layout, an amazing theme, and you just want to copy it. And this is not just copying the visuals. We are talking about copying the theme, the bookmarks, the filters, everything. Okay, let me show you how to do it. So I have two PBIX files, the source and the target. Let me just open it. And, okay. Just 1 minute. So the source is this. It's opening another screen. Sorry about this. My laptop is a little bit slow at the moment. So this is the target, and this is the source, which I don't know why, but it's not opening. Sorry about it. But the source, okay, It's not this one. This is another one. It will be a later demo, but it's something like this. And I just want to copy this entire layout to this target Power BI desktop file that has a different model. So if the model is the same, then it will be perfect. Everything will work. If the data set is not the same, it has different tables and different measures, the report will be broke. It will be an error, but the styling, the configuration, the bookmarks will all be there. So you just need to swap the fields and everything will work out. So how do you do it? So the first thing that you need to do is you go to the source report PBIX file and you just unzip it, because the PBIX file is actually a zip file. So I'm using 7-zip, and I'm going to unzip the source report, and I'm going to unzip the target report. Then you go to the source report, and in here you have a folder. So this is the content of the PBIX file. You have a folder called reports, and in this folder you have everything related to the layout of the report, to the configuration, the visuals, the custom visuals that you uploaded, the themes and the images. They are all in this folder. But the most important one is this layout. And if I open this with Visual Studio Code, you will see that okay, you'll see that this is the actual configuration of a Power BI report. So you have all the visuals, the sections, everything is in here. So what you can do is you can just copy this, so Control C. You go to the copy layout target report, you open the report folder, you should delete. If you want to copy everything, you should delete this folder. And then you paste it. So I'm just copying the report layout from the source to the target folder. And very important, you need to delete this file called security bindings. If you delete this and you select all the files, send to, and now you zip it again, and let's call this PBIX. If you open this in Power BI Desktop, actually, I was able to open the source report again. So this is the source report. You can see that in here, I have multiple pages. I have filters. I have bookmarks, and everything will get copied to that target report. So the target report, just open it right now. So everything is in here. So it has the new data set. So this is the target data set. If we look at the source report, the data set is different. It actually has the same table called sales, but on the target, it has other tables, the sales acts. And you can see that the entire layout was copied. All the pages, the filter configuration, the bookmarks, everything is in this new folder. So this can be very, very useful just to reuse the entire layout between two Power BI files. So let me just close this. Okay. So, and the next tip is the same thing, but it's copying the report layout from powerbi.com. Why do you want to do this? So I would like to not be able to need to do this, but there are some times, and maybe if you work in Power BI for a while, this could have happened to you. So if I go, let me show you, I will open a workspace here. So I have a report in this workspace that, because it's a shared report, someone built this report online, connecting to a data set, and it shows the download PBIX file, but if you try to download, it will give it an error. So you cannot go back to Power BI Desktop. And maybe you want to do it. Maybe you want to take over a report that was built by an end user. And you just want to bring this back to Power BI Desktop. How can you do it? So first, you cannot export it. If you try to call this using the API, it will fail. But there is an alternative. And the alternative is basically this. So you go again to do the F12, and that is an API that is called exploration. And let's just filter here. And if you refresh the report online, there will be an API called exploration something. It's in here. And this API, it will return the layout JSON file that I just shown you. So in here, this exploration is actually the layout of the report. So if you download this JSON file, and if you do something like this, so if you copy this JSON, if you go to a dataset PBIX file that is local in Power BI Desktop, and if you do the same technique, unzip, let's open. If you go to the report and layout, but this time we are not going to delete it. This time we are going to edit. You need to use Notepad++. If you use Visual Studio Code or even Notepad, this doesn't work because it changes the encoding of the file. So this must be in the same encoding. So, and if you open this, the original, the Power BI Desktop layout file, you delete it and you paste the layout that you get from that API, that internal API, and you save it, and you go back to the folder, you go up, you delete the security bindings again, and if you zip this back up again, reports PBIX, this will copy the report layouts, all the pages, all the bookmarks, all the filters online that exist online to a local Power BI Desktop file. So I would like to avoid doing this, but there are some cases where you just cannot download the Power BI file online, and this can save you a lot of time because you don't need to redo all the Power BI reports. You will see that this Power BI data set, this Power BI file, it doesn't have the theme, so the report is not exactly the same. So because it doesn't have the theme, how do you solve this? There is another API that is called resource package item that you can call here resource package item, and this will give you the theme. So you can also download this theme file, and this will be, you can manipulate the JSON, but it's easy to just do copy the layout and then come back here and just save that JSON file into a local file and go to save the theme. And let's imagine that this is the theme that I want, and just reconfigure the whole theme. And then you have the same reports in Power BI Desktop. So this is pretty useful. One more time, also completely unsupported, but useful. Okay. Now, another tip, this is actually something that is well supported. It's not so advanced. It's called a technique that I've been using it for a long time now. It's calling measure table or dynamic measures or KPI as a measure. So basically, this technique is making the measures available as a table. Why do you want to do it? So one reason is if you want to build a dashboard that is similar for multiple measures, so you want to select the measure as a slicer and just have the same dashboard for all the measures, so as an efficient, to be more efficient and to reuse and to have some the same level of visuals for a lot of measures, this is a good technique. Another advantage is if you do this things like year to date, last year, or even normalization, for example, or comparisons, they all exist for all the tables. So you can see here in the dynamic measure table, I have the value. So for every measure that I select, the value will give me the value of the measure, the last year, the year to date, the variations, normalization. And to do this, what you need to do is you need to have a table, let's call a dynamic measure table. You can have this table generated in DAX. It can come from an Excel file, or it can come from a database. And on this table, I have the measure code, something that I usually do like an area, like sales or HR or financial, and the format string. This is also very important. What's the format string for this measure? And then in the value, I just have a switch statement for the measure that is selected. If it's 1, it will redirect to the sales amount measure. If it's 2, it will redirect to the variation of sales amount versus last year. If it's 5, it will be a number of employees. You can also do this in calculation groups, but to be honest, I still prefer the switch approach. I didn't see a big or if any performance boost of using calculation groups for this, but I prefer this because this will allow me, for example, to have this extra column, this aggregation of the measures. This is not possible to do in calculation groups. And also, if I want to have the KPIs in a table, so something like this, the calculation groups, I could also have measures targeting the calculation groups, but it will be more difficult to do. So because I didn't see an improvement in the performance, I still prefer the switch approach. But I use calculation groups for the formatting. So there was an old problem before calculation groups. All the measures should have the same format. So the percentage will be, I needed to multiply by 100. But the calculation groups now allows you to solve the performance issue, the formatting issue. So let me show you the final result. So this is the dynamic measure report, and you can see that I have one single dashboard for all the measures. So if I select sales amount, I'm seeing the sales amount, but if I select number of customers, you can see that the format will change, but in the entire measure will change. But it's the same dashboard, so I can have a single dashboard for multiple measures. And you can even do something that only with this technique, it's the only way possible. You can build this kind of scorecard. So you have the measures by area, and you are seeing the value last year, the variations, and you can do some pretty smart stuff with it. So for example, I'm doing normalization of the measure. So if I click on sales amount and let's say sales quantity, they are completely in different axes, but I can normalize the value and see if the sales amount increases when the sales quantity increases. And I can do that only, I don't need to do the normalization for each measure, which is awesome. So, and the dynamic measure, so this is I'm doing this in a custom table. So I just configure all the measures in here, and then I have the value that just does the switch, and the last year goes, all the others, they always use the value. So, and this will be available for all the measures. So regarding the formatting, how do I solve this problem of having different formats for different measures? So this was only possible through calculation groups, and this will get me introducing into another very, very useful thing on calculation groups. So calculation groups is not only for variations and aggregation. So you can be very, very smart with it, with the calculation groups. I will show you some examples. The first one is this. So I had, if you to edit calculation groups, you need to use Tabular Editor. And in Tabular Editor, which is an amazing community tool, it's mandatory. If you work in Power BI, you need to know about Tabular Editor. Just search for it, you will find it. So I have a calculation groups that I call Smart Calcs. And in here, I have a calculation group called dynamic measure apply format. And what I'm doing is, okay, if someone selects the calculation group, I will just show the selected measure, but the format string expression, you can have it dynamically too. So on the format string expression, if any one of the measures of the dynamic measure table is being used, then I'm getting the measure code and I'm doing a lookup on the measure code to get the format. And I'm taking that format and I will switch the format dynamically. So if there is a format defined for the measure, then use it. Just return that format. If there is no format, just return the selected format string of the actual measure. So, and this is the way that I need to have this smart call dynamic measure at the page. If I remove it, you will see that everything shows in the standard format string. But if I just apply the dynamic measures apply format, this will switch the format for the actual measure that is selected. So now just two examples of things that you can do with calculation groups that are not, at least I don't see people talking about this too often, and it's incredibly powerful. So calculation group and a calculation item, when you apply it, it allows you to switch the value of the measure. So one example, and I call it the label variation over last year. So if I have a card like this, so one thing that it's actually a best practice, every time you have a Powervi and you show sales amount, so this doesn't tell you anything. So because it's 15 million, but is it good or is it bad? You need to have this in comparison to something. So, and of course that you can have another card in here. You can do something like this. So you have the sales amount and you have the comparison to the target, the comparison to last year. You can even use the KPI visual to show that, or you can use calculation groups. In calculation groups, so you create a simple card, you drag the measure that you want, and then you drag the calculation, the smart calculation group, and you select the calculation group called label variation last year. And if you do that, this calculation group, it will take the selected value, the selected measure, and it will switch the value to a text value. So this just works on cards to show the variation of to the last year. And you can do this for the last month, you can do this for the last week, for the last 12 months, whatever you want. And you can see that this is very simple. So in this case, I'm not changing anything on the format string. I'm actually changing the expression of the calculation group. So, and what I'm doing is I take the value, I will calculate the value for the selected measure for the last year. I will do the growth percentage, and then I'm using some Unicode chars and returning a string with a variation. So this is a very smart use of calculation items, not so it's not so typical, but it's very useful. Another thing that you can do is normalization. So similar to the dynamic measure. So imagine that I want to show in the same chart sales amount, sales quantity, and unit price, but they are all on the different scales. So they don't share the same scale. So sales amount is way bigger. So you can have the same chart like this, and if you apply the smart calc normalization into the visual, this will normalize all the values for you. So, and this will be, of course, it doesn't show the value, at least doesn't show on the chart. You can show it on the tooltip, but it will show, it will be easy for you to analyze when you are analyzing, see when one thing goes up, if the other things, if there is a correlation between the measures. So normalization is also something that is very useful. And one of my favorites is randomize. So let's say you are doing a demo of this dashboard, and you don't want to show the real values. So you can have a smart calc called randomize that you just apply on every measure a random. So this is not real data. So this is a very quick way, in a visual way, just to change the values because you don't want to show the real data. Okay, but it will keep everything. So randomize is also a very useful technique to use of these smart calculation groups. So I don't know, how am I in terms of time? Hello? Do I have 5 minutes or?
Can you hear me okay? So that's us kind of running out of time now. And there are some questions. Do you want to wrap up or do you want to do questions first?
Let me just wrap up real quick. So I didn't have the time to show you everything. That's my struggle every time, because I'm always adding new and removing some of the tips. I just had more 4. I won't do it. But I actually, this file proxy technique, there is a link here that you can see it. Excel and Power BI, and yeah, the one that I just want to show you, but I will just let you know, that is something that is very important to know in the Power BI platform, is know about the Power Platform. And there are a lot of things that you can do in Power BI and the Power Platform and mix them together. One of the most simple ones and yet very powerful is to show real-time data. So you can have a Power Automate flow that can query your database every minute or every 30 seconds, and then making use of Power BI streaming APIs. You can actually have a dashboard that will show real time and import data at the same time, and it will show the dashboard by the second. So the last tip I just want you to know is know about the Power Platform. So you have a lot of things: Power Apps, Power Platform, Power Automate, Power Virtual Agents, and everything can be brought together, which is one of the things that makes this platform very, very powerful, is the way that you mix all of this together. So sorry about not being able to show everything on time. I need to.
That aligns with one of the questions, Ray. One of the questions was, do you have a YouTube channel or a blog where people can access these tips and tricks,
Yes.
and potentially even download some of those PBIX files?
So to download, it's just drop me an email, and I will send just the slides will be shared. Do you have a location for? Okay, I will post the slides, and on each slide there is actually some links to deep dive on these tips. But drop me an email, and I will be glad to help you out and share with you the code of the tips that you want to know more about.
Excellent. There was also a couple of questions around using the format change, so copying the formatting from one file to another. Does it work with templates, or are there advantages to using that technique instead of templates?
So the template, if I understood the question correctly, so if the template doesn't allow you to copy between the two files. So the advantage of this technique of copying from one file to the other is, imagine that if we are talking about completely different data sets. So it's I've seen this happen, and this happens for me all the time. For example, when I have two teams working, one is working on the sales, another is working on stocks, and one of the teams actually have a layout that is more advanced, because this Power BI, you can have this like a template of the design of the report, and you can actually copy everything. And of course, that this will be broke, because if we are talking about sales to stock data, the measures will be different. So this will be broke. But you can actually, on the new data set, just switch and swap the measure, and everything will work. And you cannot actually do this with templates. So with a template, it's just you are going to export the PBIX file as a template. You can actually go inside a template and do it there also as well. But then in the end, you need to bring it back to the PBIT or PBIX. I'm not sure if I understood correctly the question, but the scenario of the copy of the layout between Power BI desktop files is when you just want to copy everything from one PBIX to the other, and that sometimes is useful.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Ray. They were the questions from the chat. I'll let you sign off and get out of everyone's way.
Okay. Thank you. It was very nice to be here.